Naoya Inoue, for the first time in 4 years, stepped back onto U.S. soil after years of boxing pundits and experts loudly insisting that he needed to fight in America to truly solidify his legacy. And after such a long absence from the States, the Japanese superstar made his triumphant return against a top 10 ranked opponent in Raymond Cardenas on a weekend that overall left many boxing fans feeling flat and disappointed with the other matchups before his bout, meaning that despite his global stature, Inoue felt to many like an afterthought compared to the bigger marketed fights earlier on the card. Yet ironically, because the rest of the weekend had underperformed, the pressure on Inoue was even greater to show up, deliver a statement, and essentially salvage the weekend for boxing fans around the world. And to his credit, he did exactly that, providing a thrilling fight, albeit one with moments that showed he was not invincible as he dared to fight with risk and was nearly punished for it. So we need to go through everything that happened in detail and what it means for Inoue's next steps in his already remarkable career for years. The criticism aimed at Inoue for supposedly avoiding U.S. fights had been relentless, with detractors ignoring the fact that he is a 2-time undisputed champion and one of the sport's most accomplished fighters, instead choosing to paint him as reluctant to test himself in front of American audiences. Yet the truth was far more practical. Inoue had already fought in the U.S. several times earlier in his career. But why would he abandon the chance to perform in front of massive home crowds in Japan, where he sells out stadiums and enjoys lucrative sponsorship deals for an uncertain reception in a smaller U.S. venue? Top Rank Boxing. His American promotional partner had pushed for a return stateside, and eventually Inoue relented. Perhaps in part to silence the narrative, and partly to satisfy his promoters, the original opponent was supposed to be Alan Picasso. But when that fell through, the team pivoted to Raymond Cardenas, a Mexican fighter ranked in the top 10, and with an added marketing angle, it was Cinco de Mayo weekend, and Mexican fight fans are among the most passionate in the sport. So even if American fans at large didn't flock to see Inoue, the promoters could count on the Mexican audience to show up and support their fighter. For Inoue, fighting on the road was nothing new, but it was still the first time in years that he was competing away from Japan. Critics weren't exactly thrilled with the matchup, and to be fair, there was some justification for that view, as Cardenas, while solid, wasn't considered elite. This was in many ways a formality fight, one to tick the box of a U.S. return before moving on to far bigger challenges. And in fact, that bigger challenge was already announced before this fight even happened, with Inoue set to face Murodjon Akhmadaliev in September. Something I've always disliked is when fighters or promoters look too far ahead past the current opponent. And while I don't believe Inoue personally was overlooking Cardenas, the media certainly was. Throughout Fight Week, most interviews centered not on Cardenas, but on Akhmadaliev, and the September bout. That kind of mindset has burned fighters before. Just ask Ryan Garcia, who, looking ahead to Devin Haney, perhaps underestimated Rolando Romero and paid for it with a loss, or Deontay Wilder, who looked past Joseph Parker and came unstuck. Cardenas himself wasn't there to simply cash a check fighting in honor of his late trainer's legacy. He brought real intent. And when the opening bell rang, Inoue started in his usual style, light on his feet, snapping out the jab, assessing his opponent. But Cardenas from the beginning was throwing with real heat in the second round. The fight took a shocking turn when Cardenas landed a vicious left hook that floored Inoue, leaving him visibly shaken. It was a rare sight seeing the Japanese champion hurt, and it was clear Cardenas had come in with a specific counter-punching strategy, and early on it was paying dividends. Yet this is where Inoue's championship pedigree showed. He quickly recognized the mistake that led to the knockdown, adjusted his timing and positioning, and for the rest of the night avoided being caught with the same shot. The third round saw a more cautious Inoue as he tested his adjustments before gradually ramping up the pressure. He noticed that Cardenas liked to fire back immediately after Inoue threw, so he began subtly stepping just out of range after his own jab, baiting Cardenas to counter, and then punishing him with hard combinations. It was a smart and beautiful adaptation that began to tilt the momentum fully in his favor. By the 7th round, Inoue's sustained body and head attack began to seriously break Cardenas down, culminating in a knockdown in that round. Though Cardenas beat the count, his body language told the story, and in the 8th round, after another furious flurry, the referee waved it off. Some observers felt the stoppage was slightly premature, but given the punishment Cardenas had started to absorb, it likely only delayed the inevitable. Inoue had survived real adversity to claim the win, and in doing so reminded the boxing world why he's considered one of the pound-for-pound best. It's worth applauding both men for providing genuine entertainment on a weekend, otherwise lacking it with the crowd. inside the arena, chanting Inoue's name long after the fight ended. I won't dive too deeply into the endless online debates about Inoue versus Gervonta Davis, or whether Inoue is overrated. But I will say this getting dropped in boxing is not a cardinal sin. It happens. The measure of a fighter is how they respond. And Inoue got up, faced the danger head-on, adjusted, and took control. Compare that to Tank Davis, who, in a fight against Isaac Cruz, seemed to wilt after a minor setback without making significant adjustments and ended up with a draw, rather than forcing a win. As for Cardenas, though he lost, he introduced himself to a much wider audience and showed enough to secure future opportunities. I'd personally love to see him matched with someone like Luis Neri for Inoue. However, the road ahead is much more defined and intriguing. He remains one of the most active champions in the sport, something that deserves recognition, and after signing on as an ambassador for Riyadh, season expectations are that he will continue fighting top opposition. Next up is indeed Akhmadaliev in September, a fight that some fans complained about not happening earlier. Though the reality is, Akhmadaliev had his own setbacks that delayed it, and the public moaning from promoters like Eddie Hearn about stripping Inoue was baseless. When you examine the facts, there's also been criticism that Inoue's recent fights haven't been against the very best available. But much of that blame lies with challengers rather than him. The saga with Sam Goodman is a perfect example. After Inoue's Tokyo Dome victory over Neri, Goodman stormed the ring demanding the next shot, or for Inoue to vacate the belt. Inoue accepted immediately. But Goodman then pulled out, claiming he needed a tune-up fight, leading to Inoue taking on a replacement opponent nicknamed Packyweather. And when the Goodman fight was rescheduled, he withdrew again just weeks out due to a cut, so pinning this on Inoue is simply unfair. This is a man who fought for a world title in only his 6th professional bout. He's not in the habit of ducking anyone beyond Akhmadaliev. There's already chatter about another fight for Inoue, possibly in Saudi Arabia. In December, maybe on the undercard of a potential Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev trilogy bout. If that happens, Goodman could still be the opponent, provided he wins his next fight. There's unfinished business there, and Goodman's ranking makes him a logical choice. Past that, the dream fight for many is Junto Nakatani versus Naoya Inoue, before Inoue eventually moves up to featherweight. Nakatani, with his size, power, and style, would be a thrilling matchup, though an equally exciting option could be Rafael Espinoza, who fought on the same card and nearly stole the spotlight, standing at 6'1", fighting at featherweight with a dangerous uppercut and fan-friendly aggression. Espinoza could be a perfect high-profile introduction for Inoue to the division, though. It's also possible Inoue might prefer a safer first step up, such as a rematch with Stephen Fulton. Whatever the case, those scenarios remain speculative for now. What is certain is that the Cardenas fight, though, raising some questions about Inoue's vulnerability, was still one of the weekend's highlights alongside Espinoza's performance, and served as a timely reminder that no matter the circumstances, Inoue delivers drama, skill, and entertainment in equal measure. After years of calls for him to fight again in the U.S., he came, he saw, and though briefly rattled, he conquered. And with a schedule as active as his, the next big night is never far away.